In my life, I've heard many hurtful words. Some were directed at me. You're a single woman. You're a scumbag. But none compared to the insult my brother-in-law hurled at me. I won't let his slanderous remarks go unchallenged. My name is Amy Smith. I am 38 years old, single and working. How do I have a brother-in-law if I'm not married? Because I'm engaged. My fiancé James is 6 years younger than me. We met through a mutual friend and hit it off right away. I have a very hectic work schedule and often work on my days off. I met James during a particularly busy period, and he became my source of relaxation and companionship. James is good at cooking and sewing and is a hard worker, qualities I lack. After we moved in together, he took care of the housework and even cleaned my suits, which was extremely helpful. I'm always sorry. I know you're busy too. I've reserved a table at a nice restaurant for my next day off, so let's have dinner together. It became a habit for me to treat James to dinner as a token of appreciation for the hard work he does every day with the money I earn from my job. Don't worry about it. I can leave my job on time, and I'm not nearly as busy as you. Most importantly, I do housework because I enjoy it, James always reassures me. How are your family's plans for our upcoming meeting? We had already met each other's parents shortly after our engagement, but we wanted to host a dinner party so both families could get to know each other better. James has one older brother while I have two younger siblings. Instead of meeting for the first time at the wedding, both families suggested getting acquainted beforehand, so we decided to bring everyone together, parents and siblings included. I'm sorry, but my brother can't come because of his work, James explained. I know you're also busy with work, so please accept my apologies. Your brother is a very talented lawyer, isn't he? I asked James, who bowed his head. I wish I could have met him, but if he's busy, then it can't be helped. We'll meet at the wedding. In truth, I wasn't too worried because I thought it was important for the couple and parents to get together, even if their siblings couldn't. My brother can be cool towards people, so even if he does come, I'm worried that he might be rude, James said. He appeared tense. On the day of the party, my brother-in-law was, as expected, not present. James looked relieved that his brother wasn't there. My brother and sister both attended, and it turned out to be an enjoyable gathering. My parents-in-law and I had a good time, and my siblings seemed to like James, which relieved me. It was a fantastic opportunity, and I only wish I had met my brother-in-law. The day came to an end with that in mind. I never imagined that when I finally met my brother-in-law, I would find him to be such a rude person and feel relieved that I had met him at the dinner party. One day, my mother and I were at the university hospital. She hadn't been feeling well and was referred here for a thorough examination after visiting a clinic near my parents' house. Although her symptoms were limited to palpitations and dizziness, I wanted to make sure everything was okay before the wedding. My mother, in her mid-60s, still looks youthful, but I worried about her health. She had raised my siblings and me so well, despite delaying marriage until her 40s, and I felt I owed her. Why didn't I pay for you to have a thorough checkup, Mom? I suggested. I had never felt so strongly before. This is what I have been earning money for, to help in situations like this because I can't always be there. Since the tests couldn't be completed in one day, we had to visit the hospital multiple times. The unfortunate incident occurred during our second visit. The university hospital was extremely crowded that day with long lines everywhere. My mother and I were waiting with a cup of hot tea in a small area away from the main waiting room where we could eat and drink. Then my phone rang. It might be a work call. I left my tea with my mother and went to a quiet spot where I could take the call. It was indeed work-related, a question about whether I was going to change my surname at work when I joined the family register. After the call, I returned to my mother and heard some yelling. Why would someone be screaming in the hospital? I hoped my mother was all right. As I got closer, I realized the yelling was directed at my mother. I rushed over to her. My mother had risen from her seat and was bowing repeatedly to a man in a suit. Who is he? He was dressed in an expensive-looking suit with a luxurious watch and shoes. His hair was pulled back, and he carried himself with an air of arrogance. He looked more like a debt collector than someone who should be at a hospital. He didn't seem like a friend of my mother's, so I stepped in. "Excuse me for interrupting," I said. "Did my mother harm you in any way?" The man turned his gaze to me and looked me over from head to toe. She placed a cup of tea or something on the seat, and when I sat next to her, it fell and stained my suit. "What are you going to do?" "I have business after this." I examined his suit more closely and saw that it did appear to be slightly damp. I sincerely apologize. Let me pay for the dry cleaning, I tried to say, but the man was unconvinced and interrupted me, yelling even louder. His shouting inside the hospital naturally drew a lot of attention. A few nurses came out, and a crowd quickly gathered. I'll let you off with a cleaning fee, the man finally said, perhaps realizing the situation had escalated. Do you have any contact details? How can I reach you? He inquired. Oh no, I didn't have my business card on me. Just then, a security guard approached. Are you all right? Is everything in order? Is there a problem? The gentleman clicked his tongue and tossed his business card at my feet. Make sure you call me, he said. There's no point in fleeing. I have a close relationship with this hospital, and I'm sure they will share your information with me. What? What on earth is going on? My mother and I are both sorry, I tried to explain, but he took one look at my hand and said, You're single at your age. Women are said to have an expiration date, but you are not only expired, you're unsold industrial waste. You're like raw garbage, a single woman. His rudeness was staggering. Just as I was about to respond to the insult directed not only at me but at my mother, the man took off, evading the pursuing security guard. What's with that rude attitude? I'm furious. My stomach was in knots from disappointment over not being able to protect my mother and the man's offensive remarks. I gave a polite bow to the onlookers and security guards who had rushed over and picked up the business card that had fallen at my feet. I was curious about who this unpleasant man was. As I read the name and title, it became clear why he had acted so arrogantly. I canceled the rest of the checkup and headed home, focusing on my mother's well-being. That man's behavior was unforgettable, and I vowed to make him regret his disrespectful actions toward both me and my mother. About a week later, I went to the courthouse. Unlike in the US, it wasn't about suing over a stain on a suit. As I walked through the familiar halls, my heels clicking on the floor, I saw a man approaching who looked familiar. I recognized him immediately. What should I say to him? As I passed by, he looked up and sneered. You're the trashy single woman from the other day, aren't you? What are you doing here? This isn't the place for you. It was indeed the same man who had been so rude to my mother and me. I wanted to respond harshly, but have always been determined to fight injustice with a strong sense of righteousness. Oh, I'm very sorry about the other day. I believe you're Tom Dixon of the Honeywell Law Office, I said, recalling his business card that had been tossed at me. I brushed aside his rude comment with a calm demeanor. The man was clearly agitated and his face twisted with irritation. I had a client appointment at the hospital after that incident, he said, his tone dripping with disdain. You embarrass me. I can't believe a woman like you could stain someone's suit and then fail to return my call. Dixon, a lawyer, was clearly upset. The fact that we happened to run into each other here seemed to add to his frustration. His loud voice drew attention from everyone around us. It seemed he was trying to make a scene, possibly to brag, and I was prepared to call security if his behavior continued. Unfortunately, such men are not uncommon in the legal field. I shook my head in disbelief, which only seemed to anger Dixon further. Mr. Dixon, why are you shouting? Someone asked from behind me. The man approached and inquired, Mr. Dixon, what's the problem? On seeing the newcomer, Dixon's tone abruptly changed. He muttered, Oh, this woman. The man pulled a business card from his case and glanced at me with a look of recognition. As I picked up the card he had dropped, it read, Attorney Hannibal, partner at Honeywell Law Office. This must be Dixon's boss and the firm's CEO. Realizing who I was, he began to shake and immediately bowed deeply, greeting me with utmost respect. Oh my, it's been a while, Mr. Honeywell exclaimed. Dixon, my subordinate, has been incredibly rude to you. Please accept my sincere apologies. Dixon, who was clearly confused, protested, Mr. Honeywell, what's happening? Do you know this woman? She's the one who stained my suit and overcharged me for the dry cleaning. Mr. Honeywell, now visibly distressed, grabbed Dixon by the collar and forced him to bow deeply. Ouch! What are you doing? Dixon exclaimed, struggling. Honeywell spoke softly but firmly to Dixon. How dare you, Dixon? This woman is a prosecutor, and she's my former boss, Amy Smith, known for winning every case she takes on. Dixon's confusion deepened. He couldn't believe that the woman he had insulted was a prosecutor. Indeed, I am a lawyer. From a young age, I couldn't stand injustice and was torn between becoming a police officer or a lawyer. I chose the latter, driven by a desire to bring criminals to justice, even if I couldn't catch them myself. My career path led me to the prosecution after a former colleague invited me to advance my career. Now, I frequently appear in court for work. Mr. Honeywell, who once looked up to me as a mentor, is now clearly unsettled, as the bond between a mentor and a rookie endures, no matter how much time passes. Dixon, clearly shocked and at a loss for words, tried to speak, but I interrupted him. "You've grown into a fine man, Mr. Honeywell," I said. "Mr. Dixon, I will cover the cost of your dry cleaning promptly. I apologize for my work-related busyness. Is that all right, brother-in-law?" "Brother-in-law?" Attorney Dixon stammered, his mouth agape. "No way, James Fiancay." He was visibly stunned. I glanced at the business card he had thrown at me earlier, trying to piece together the situation. It was clear now that this rude man was indeed my brother-in-law, who had missed our wedding due to work commitments. Dixon's face went pale as he realized the truth. As a lawyer, you should know that comments like "a single woman is garbage" are deeply insulting. I was prepared to settle the dry cleaning bill, but your reaction was unacceptable. You could face a year in prison, a fine of up to $3,000, or both. "What do you prefer?" I said, smiling as I spoke. Attorney Dixon, recognizing the gravity of his situation, fell to his knees and bowed his head. "Please forgive me. If the press finds out." It seems that assertive lawyers are acutely aware of media implications. Sometime later, I had a wonderful wedding and am now enjoying my newlywed life to the fullest. James is now a dedicated house husband, which allows me to focus more on my career. My brother-in-law repeatedly apologized to both my mother and me and offered to settle the matter, but I decided to simply have him write off the dry cleaning bill and let it go. I can manage the cost myself. He didn't attend the ceremony, likely out of embarrassment. His business has suffered due to his attitude towards us and complaints from other clients. It seems that bad behavior eventually catches up with you. I promised myself that I would protect the life we've built and continue to support each other.